but the painting salon happens every month, third Tuesday, and we usually try to shake up different locations in the Bay Area. Next month I'm going to be going to Berlin and hosting a salon there. That's kind of TBD, but and we'll be recording all of our different events this year, so you can check our website kind of like a couple weeks out to watch if you don't make it talk. And we're going to do about 45 minutes. Rachel's going to talk, and then we'll take a little break, and then Miriam is going to talk for another 45 or so minutes. And do you want questions during, or?
Yeah, during would be fine.
Cool, so feel free to interrupt. And I'm just going to introduce Rachel. So Rachel Cardenas Stallings is a San Francisco-based artist working in painting from 2016 to 2017. Cool, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah, like Sarah said, my name is Rachel Cardenas Stallings. Originally from Utah. I'm a second-year MFA student at Berkeley, so I'll be graduating in May. For those of you who have done an MFA, I'm really in the thick of it and preparing for my thesis exhibition right now, so I'll be talking a lot about that. I'm also juggling a lot of things here. So as many of you might understand, for those of you who have an art practice, writing artist statements and presenting on my work has always been really difficult for me. This is kind of how I view the thought process or the research behind my work. This is like what it looks like to me. It's not very linear. It's random often. And so whenever I go to speak about my work, I end up like only touching on like this much. And often it like falls really flat also. And so I like to kind of give this premise before I talk, so that I don't feel pressured to cover everything, and for you to understand that what I do talk about here is just kind of the tip of the iceberg kind of thing. But I will try to talk about a few things that are really important to me. So I took an art writing class from my professor. Her name is Ann Walsh, and she had us writing really more creative artist statements. Like, she really discouraged us from writing like, my artwork explores X, Y, and Z. And that was really helpful for me because I started to think about my writing as going hand in hand with my work, with what I do in the studio, and as a sort of a practice on its own. So that was really helpful for me. She had us write a fable. I had never written one before, and a fable is a short story, typically with animals as characters, conveying a moral. So I did this fable. It's rushing up. Let's see. My slides aren't loading. My fable. Okay, I wrote two fables. So the first one is about, it's my paintbrush fable. So it says, 3 paintbrushes in an art studio came together and asked themselves, why do we have no say in what's being painted? They spent the next 48 hours wondering and conversing. One of the 3 finally blurted out, there's no solution here. We'll be used and abused for the rest of our lives. Just then, a cat named Pilar walked in and sat on all 3 paintbrushes. She had been spying on them all along and decided she needed to put an end to their revolution. As soon as she sat down, the art studio turned gray and with a moan declared nothing will ever happen here again. Pilar destroyed the studio's life force with her ass. The moral is listen to your tools. This one is about color. Pink was mean and blue was rude. Yellow was mellow and white was an asshole. The colors in the art studio are working with each other to make something important and to remind people that they matter. Why did the colors work so hard? They already existed out in the world. They were already on everything and everywhere. Was it possible for the colors to reconfigure to something different? We've been working hard since the very first memory, said Green unexpectedly. Why keep going? Brown responded with a song. Find me in your poop, take me by the hand, help me think what I can be like. It's getting really important. Yeah. I help you calm your nerves and smell like something good. Earth I am, and funny I am, I am, I am, I am. The colors remembered that they felt different in the art studio. They felt like something was singing to them and reminding them of their origin. The moral is color is important. So for me, this was interesting because it was like very, I just wrote it without thinking, and it really highlighted for me what a lot of things that are important in my practice, like color and texture and humor. And tools, so I wanted to show you that. So I'll go back a long time. I made these drawings over 10 years ago, and it's when I first started taking drawing seriously, and what I would do is just like surf Google images for hours and find imagery that spoke to me and like draw collage, and then I would post it on a blog every day. So it was kind of like a journal that I was keeping, basically, and I was looking at a lot of illustration at this time. But even today, like my practice hasn't strayed too much from this, where I still collect imagery, I'm still like responding to situations or surroundings really immediately in sort of an autobiographical way. So then, this is a few years later in undergrad. I was mostly painting in my undergrad, and I was reading a lot of Philip Guston's writings, and I really loved how he talked about abstraction and the picture plane, and I was really interested in the idea of like erasures and how he thought about shapes and imagery as being something to excavate or to dig up, and that they're kind of already there, but he was just like finding them. And so that's kind of what I set out to do during this time and have come back to in my practice for a long time. And these are, the one on the left is on paper, the one on the right is oil on canvas. This one on the left is, mixed media on paper. The one on the right is a marker with bleach on it. A quote I really like from Philip Guston's writings is, "It was also a discovery that there is no such thing as an accident. There is no such thing as being erratic, really. There is no such thing as a mistake. Sometimes I start a drawing and the mind is quicker than the hand, and I don't like that. I want the hand to be, if not ahead of the hand, at least simultaneous. And so the impulse is to go to the right hand with a full pen of ink. I would go with the left, and then something would happen, like a sensation of a mistake. So I would follow the mistake. But then, when you're through, there's an image that you've always wanted to see, but you didn't know it. These things weren't planned, you understand." So these are much later, but as you can see, I come to this imagery by sort of drawing, covering, digging up, erasing. Same thing here. I made these last year. The one on the left is mixed media, mostly acrylic and watercolor on canvas. And the one on the right is acrylic on panel. I've also looked at a lot of Latin American modernist painting, like Emilia Perez, who's on the left, and we've got Salon, Rufina Tamayo, Tarsila de la Moral on the right. And I view the color in my paintings as being in conversation with their color. And through looking at this work, I got really interested in abstracting figures and was trying for a really long time, and still do, to sort of, develop a language around abstraction the way that they did. And let's see. I'm missing a quote here. So these are some of the images that I work from, and these are all photos that I've taken. And I collect imagery and look for things out in the world to bring back into my studio. And so I would say, like, a lot of my work is observational. So that's a hand-painted sign in Mexico. The paint on the wall is outside of a paint shop in Colombia, where my grandmother's from. And I think the paint shop owner was just like testing the paint over and over for like a long period of time. That's a clown I met in Mexico, in Baja. These are spoons that look just like functional spoons, but they're actually an instrument. And then this is a drawing by my niece that I really loved, of herself on a motorcycle. More hand-painted signs, interiors of Latino markets. So, like I said, this process of gathering material and bringing it into my studio, things that I come in contact with, it kind of naturally becomes like a journal, and the work becomes very autobiographical because of that. So on the bottom left, there's these little characters that I found painted in front of a butcher shop in LA, across the street from my studio. These are oil on canvas. The shapes here on the right-hand side were taken from like just a game that my niece and I played with paper, where we were just doing cutouts and things, and so I pieced them together and made a painting from it. This is oil on canvas, and here I was sort of working through my relationship to religion and spirituality, and it's sort of a self-portrait. Same thing here. This is watercolor on paper. This is a family tree. More figures. This is called 3 Figures. It's oil on canvas. Another family tree. this is sort of came out of a situation for an event with my husband where I had this feeling like he shouldn't go surfing that day, and I told him not to. And then a few weeks later, he told me he almost drowned that day. And so I made a painting about it. And then, but I didn't have a good drawing of a surfer, but I have that good drawing of my niece on a motorcycle, so I put that in there. This is oil canvas and oil crayon. I've made some video work. This is really just an attempt for me to like make my 2D work into 3D. That's something that I've like just like, for me this is like what I do for fun. And I think it's translated pretty well, and it's something I hope to keep doing. The one on the left comes from a painting from a Mexican muralist, whose name I don't remember right now.
What is all the stuff on you?
That's not me, that's a friend. And yeah, you guys can call up questions anytime. That's all fruit. Real fruit. Bananas, watermelon, yeah. That one is called Sleepily Dead. The one on the right is called Mars. Let's see. Here I was really interested in dressing up in costume. I was interested in dressing up in a strong matriarchal role and seeing what that would look like for me. And I asked my mom to do this project with me, so we dreamt up her costume, and I asked her what her costume wanted, what she wanted on her costume, and she wanted people to know that she loves people. So I wrote that on her matriarchal costume. And then I wanted a crown, and so my crown is my husband's butt. And so I took this with a selfie stick, and then my husband stood behind a piece of paper while I got the right shot for several hours. So I have learned how, like a few years ago, I learned how to sew, and I was sewing pillows and curtains in my own clothing for fun. And I really wanted to start sewing in my practice, but it was really difficult for me to bring that in to my practice and to be able to like figure out how to jump from painting to textile work. So my first attempts were basically I was just painting but with textile and drawing with thread. So on the right, I would draw with the sewing machine. So I would just run the canvas back and forth with the sewing machine to fill in the shapes. And on the left, I was approaching the textile the same way I would with a painting, and using applique here, and jumping out of the traditional box, but still pretty confined to it. So I started making this work last year, and I would call these my painter suits. So I would think of them as things I'd wear while I was painting. And so I would put them on and paint. And then, or like the one on the right, I would paint it while wearing it. The one on the left is more similar, like I was more approaching it like a drawing really, and looking at the traditional clothing of the Kuchol and taking note of their imagery on their clothing. And on the right, I made this piece for a group show, a control shift, and I was really interested in jumping into making work that was more functional and where I wasn't approaching it the same way I approach my painting. So I made these different robes with a sewing pattern, and they were accessible to the public, so people could come up and put them on and wear them around the gallery. So that was a big jump for me, and yeah, it was interesting to see what happened when there weren't parameters around the participation, because it kind of became a free-for-all.
What made you want to jump from painting to textiles?
I think the idea that I was having more fun doing the textile work. I was having more fun doing like my hobby of like making pillowcases and curtains, and painting felt like it was me against this huge tradition that was mostly male dominated. And for me, textile was like this totally different history and tradition, and just like there's so much breathing room for me. And I was in conversation with my aunts who are professional seamstresses, and instead of a lot of old dead white men, or with other feminist artists who long been in this realm, and that excited me. Yeah. So
I'm curious how you determine like your fun stuff to your like more serious stuff. Like what's like that dividing factor?
I don't think there is one. I think I'm better at like stopping when it's not fun anymore. So in general. So I think I still enjoy painting, but I think I have to juggle it with different things. Like I have to be doing 4 different things at once. So I have a painting going, but I also have, I'm also making rugs at the same time, I'll jump to that, but it's...
And do you think of the rugs as less serious, or? Like,
no,
okay.
not anymore, not
Cool.
at all. Yeah, I think it's more like I brought all those things into my studio now, and they're all in conversation with each other, and that kind of lifted this heavy load I had when it was just me and painting, or me and what I thought of traditional painting,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because in my undergrad it was a very conservative and traditional painting with capital P kind of place, and I do see my textile work as painting painterly, but I think just juggling the different mediums is what keeps it fun for me. So I'll jump to this year, which is for the past school year, so last September, where all this is starting to happen for me, what I've been talking about. I've started working on my thesis show, and have been working with Maria Guzman-Cabron, who's a local artist, and she's on my committee, and we've been talking about craft and craft theory and clothes and color, and one of the readings that she gave me is this one here, and he talks about the creative process as being just as important as the art object itself and being the artwork itself. And so that has also helped me to stop viewing the end product as the reason that I'm in the studio, but to start seeing what I'm doing in the studio as the work itself. So I've started to document what I do in the studio. I've started to just bring in a lot of different ways of working as a result of reading this article. And also what I really like about it is that he talks about the medium as having its own will and imposing its will onto the maker just as much as the maker imposing their will onto the object, and I find that really interesting. I wanted to link to this video that Bam made in my studio just to give you, and watch it for a little bit, just to give you an idea of what my studio looks like right now. I've never had a studio this size, and it's really affected my work in a major way, where I started to treat the studio as an installation space and also think of it as an interior space. So I've been making a lot of objects to sort of occupy the space. A lot of the objects are purely functional, and it's just radically shifted in practice. So I will show you a little clip of this. Oh, will it not do that?
Oh, wait a second. Just let it. Oh, that's weird. It must be with the speaker. Do you want to?
It's
play
okay.
the audio on that?
We don't. That's probably better, right?
Where can people find this video if they want?
You can find it on BAM's Berkeley Art Museum's.
We'll put a link on our website too. Maybe post in the
Yeah.
group.
Yeah.
Take your time.
Yeah, but basically I'm talking about how I like going on walks where I live in the outer Sunset and taking photos of the architecture there, and how a lot of the color combinations in the outer Sunset are really awkward. Like there's like a neon green trimming on beige, and I take that and just duplicate it in my studio. And what else do I
Is that where the
say?
studio is? Is that there?
No, I'm in Richmond. Yeah, just sort of
right.
at the.
Graduate studio.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I don't know if you got a sense of my studio here, but yeah. Okay. So this is what I'm talking about, the color combinations that I love. Yeah, and so this is like a documentation of me finding something out in the world and bringing it into the studio and making things from it. So I found this little piece of ceramic in Baquita in Colombia, and it's from a pesebre. How do you say pesebre? A manger? Yeah, it's for a manger. A creche, yeah, a creche. But I really love the shape of it.
And you drew it?
So I drew it,
Oh.
then I made it, I duplicated it, and then they're sitting next to my paintings now. And I think the next iteration, there'll be butter dishes.
Oh, that's the lid.
Yeah, this is the lid, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So that's kind of how things kind of evolve.
Is that
in this
ceramic?
studio. It's ceramic, yeah.
Why were you drawn to this specific form?
I think the awkwardness, how lumpy it is, the shape, the shape, it's abstracted. It's not, it doesn't look real at all. And there's something like amateur about it, where the other pottery looked very professionally made, and this felt like, it was obvious that the person who made it, like you could see the fingerprints. You could see.
When you showed that, my first thought was that you had the drawing and then you went and made the sculpture after the drawing. That was what it.
Oh yeah, no.
Fantasy.
Kind of reminds me of like the Jesus Feast version.
Yes, I love that. I love that. Yeah. So, in the video, I was talking about working on an installation for my thesis show. So I'm kind of taking what's been happening in my studio to the Berkeley Art Museum. So I'm making lamps and rugs and spoons and paintings, curtains, and putting it all into the space. It's sort of started to become like a showroom to me, and so I have been making this catalog for the showroom that might be on display too. I made a rice and beans plate. I've been working on these rugs, and this is a tufting gun, so it shoots yarn instead of bullets.
Oh my God.
And it's been really difficult to get starting, but I consider like learning these new skills as part of my practice now, and find that really exciting, and I'm interested in gaining like a large set of skills. Like I've been woodworking and serging, making clothing from patterns, and so like collecting these skills and bringing them into the studio is something.
Is this like a hook rug style thing? Like what does the end product look like with this one?
Yeah, it is. It's similar. Yeah. Yeah. I'll show you a video. This is wall decor, I call it. They're like tiles. That will be on the
Is that glaze or paint? Or both?
It's underglaze.
Underglaze.
Yeah, so it's only discolored. Yeah. So that's the rice and beans play on the right. Candelabra on the left. So there's a lot of like arranging and rearranging in this space, a lot of sort of dreaming up and like world, and it feels like I'm doing, the space what I have been doing on the picture plane for so long. So it's exciting for me to bring shapes and these objects out into the world. And my thesis show will be called, how do you say it? Rebanadas. That's a difficult word to say. Rebanadas de zanahoria, or carrot slices. And I was eating tacos at a taqueria, and the carrot slices that are pickled that go with the tacos are so beautiful to me. And so I wanted to like duplicate that shape over and over. So this bowl, I call that a bowl. Those are the carrot slices. And so in the exhibition, you'll see that I'll be repeating that shape over and over in different ways, that orange circle. So this is my website. If any of you have any other questions or want to know more about my work, you can find more work on there. Does anyone have any questions?
Like with the clothing items or
Yeah.
like that, like what is an ideal, what is some exciting ways that you have seen that you thought, oh, that's how I like people to see it?
To see it or to participate in it? Or what do you...
Well, like what would I see if I walked into the room? What would you like it to, how do you like it to look? Is it, like, or and like in what situation is it going to be? Is it in somebody's closet?
Oh, okay.
Wall?
I think a lot about display. So I've recently made a clothing rack. I didn't put that in here, but it'll be in the installation. I've made several clothing racks, and they've all failed, like, because it becomes a sculpture, you know, and
It becomes part of
it
it.
becomes,
Piece.
yeah, exactly. I do want it to feel like it's coming from a domestic space, but like a home, but then kind of, you know, altering it in a way that is more in conversation with the way I make painting. So I, you know, just made some really jagged cuts into pieces of wood and put it together. I don't know if
To do
that's
the
a
wrap.
question. To do the wrap, yeah.
Because that's part of it.
Yeah, I hung it on the wall. You know, I want to make it look like paintings. Now my solution is to try to get it off the wall, more into the space, and it becomes more sculptural. Participation is difficult.
So not just a wrap that's holding it, that's sort of...
Oh, the wrap, yeah, well, the wrap will be holding the
It's a
clothing.
sculpture.
Yeah, yeah. These are all very new things for me, so. But thanks for asking. Yeah.
I also know what ways the content of your work has shifted when you moved from like painting to sculptural or like, I don't know, textile work? Like,
Yeah.
are you still telling the same stories that you were telling with painting, or has it opened new doors, or has the content of it?
It's really early for me to tell. Like I feel like I've really leapt into new ways of making. So right now, like the conversations I'm having around it is like what I'm, you know, the things that I'm observing and making from. That seems really in line with what I was doing before, where it was like an immediate response to my surroundings. Like those are the things I can tie with what I was doing before, or how I can connect it to each other. As far as the content, I feel like it's developing still. It's, you know, like I'm making this work right now, so it's difficult for me to talk about fully. Yeah. Oh, sure.
I was curious, given your exploration of various mediums, is there something that painting allows you to do that other mediums do not? Or is it the other way around?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I would say I definitely, like I've tried really hard to be like, I'm just an artist, you know, I'm not a painter, and I make whatever, you know, like I work in installation and textile, but for me everything comes back to painting, and the way I developed myself for like 10 years in painting, it just translates to everything I do. Everything becomes like painterly. it just like, I can't make a textile piece without it having a certain sort of surface, you know, and I think I developed that language through painting, and so even if I'm not exactly painting, I think it all circles around painting for me, or will come back to it, or comes out of it, yeah. Did you have a question?
Would you mind to show the slides very, you go back a little bit more, I'm sorry.
Do you want me to go?
Yeah, go back to some slide, because there's
Sure.
one slide I was curious.
Which one?
More like if you're painting a period time. There's one, keep going back. More back, almost there.
It's okay. Oh, it looks so different on the projector. I wasn't looking. Did you see
Okay,
it?
here, yes, this
Okay.
one. On the left-hand side, I'm curious, in this period of time, is anybody that influenced you a lot? Because from this painting, looks like Diego Rivera's. Can you translate?
Oh, do you remember that?
Yes, so I was curious, in this time, is any artist that influenced you a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up looking at a lot of Mexican muralism and a lot of Spanish art. I went to the Prado a lot as a teenager, so I was always looking at Goya like obsessively. And then, yeah, I would say I was looking at a lot of Diego Rivera from the time I was a teenager. Yeah, so it's like really in there for me. Yeah.
So this, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, this piece, did any influence on any artist for this piece at all?
I think several artists, many artists. Like I was really loving like Mary Hellman a lot at that time. Who else? Many people. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I the way my mind works is I'm looking at a lot of painters all at once and making, and it maybe like I see like, oh, that's like that person, this person, that person, kind of all at once. But I wouldn't say I look at one painter and then respond to that one painting. Yeah. But I'm glad you see Frida Rivera. I hope you see, yeah, Frida Kahlo too.
Cool, let's take a little break.
Okay.
Thank you so much.